World War II is often remembered through legends, indestructible rifles, unstoppable machine guns, and weapons that shaped victory. Names like the M1 Garand, the MP40, or the PPSH-41 dominate history books and documentaries. But behind those success stories lies a quieter, uncomfortable truth. Not every gun sent to war was ready for it. Some weapons failed not because soldiers were weak, but because design, politics, desperation, and rushed decisions pushed flawed tools into the hands of men who depended on them to survive. These guns were not just mechanical failures. They were human tragedies forged from steel and poor judgment. As the war expanded across frozen forests, burning deserts, muddy trenches, and shattered cities, nations raced to arm millions of soldiers as quickly as possible. Speed often mattered more than perfection. Engineers were pressured, factories were overloaded, and testing was shortened or ignored. In this chaos, several firearms entered service before they were truly ready. On paper, they looked revolutionary. In reality, many became liabilities. When a weapon jammed in combat, it wasn't just metal failing. It was hope, trust, and sometimes life itself. One of the most infamous examples is the Japanese Type 94 Nambu pistol. Designed as a sidearm for officers, it should have been a symbol of authority and reliability. Instead, it became one of the most dangerous pistols ever issued. Its internal sear mechanism was exposed on the outside of the frame, meaning that pressure applied to the side of the gun, sometimes even from a holster, could cause it to fire without the trigger being pulled. Soldiers carried a weapon that could betray them at any moment. On the battlefield, where stress and movement were constant, this flaw was terrifying. The Type 94 didn't just fail to protect its user, it actively endangered them. Then there was the Italian Breda 30 light machine gun, a weapon that perfectly illustrates how bad design can cripple good intentions. Italy wanted a modern light machine gun for its infantry, and the Breda 30 was meant to fill that role. Instead, it became a logistical nightmare. The gun used fixed ammunition strips that were slow to reload and easily damaged. Worse, the Breda required oiling of cartridges to function properly, a disastrous idea in dusty deserts or muddy terrain. Dirt mixed with oil, causing frequent jams. Soldiers often found themselves desperately clearing malfunctions while under fire. The Breda 30 wasn't just unreliable, it demanded ideal conditions in a war that offered none. Germany, despite its reputation for engineering excellence, was not immune to failure either. Late in the war, as resources dwindled and Allied bombing devastated factories, Germany rushed the Volkssturm series into production. These rifles were meant to arm the Volkssturm, old men and teenage boys pressed into service during the final collapse of the Reich. Built cheaply with stamped metal and minimal machining, many of these weapons were inaccurate, uncomfortable, and unreliable. The tragedy wasn't just the poor quality of the guns, but who they were given to. These weapons symbolized desperation. They were tools of a regime that had run out of options, sending civilians into battle with rifles that barely worked. Another German failure was the early production of the FG-42, a rifle designed for elite paratroopers. On paper, it was brilliant, a select-fire rifle with high power and advanced features. In practice, it was over-engineered and difficult to manufacture. Early versions had severe recoil, control issues, and mechanical stress that led to failures. While later versions improved, the FG-42 never reached the numbers or reliability needed to truly impact the war. It became a weapon admired more for its ambition than its effectiveness. The Soviet Union, fighting a brutal war of survival, also fielded weapons that struggled under real combat conditions. The AVS-36, an early Soviet automatic rifle, was intended to give infantry overwhelming firepower. Instead, it proved uncontrollable in automatic fire and mechanically fragile. Its complex design did not tolerate dirt or rough handling well, two things unavoidable on the Eastern Front. Soldiers often preferred simpler bolt-action rifles over a weapon that promised power but delivered frustration. Eventually, the AVS-36 was replaced, quietly disappearing from frontline service. Even the United States, known for emphasizing soldier safety and testing, made mistakes. The M3 grease gun, while eventually respected for its simplicity, faced early criticism. Its slow rate of fire and crude construction made soldiers distrust it at first. In harsh environments, early models suffered from feeding issues, and its wire stock offered little comfort. While the M3 improved over time, its rough introduction shows that even successful weapons can begin as failures in the eyes of those who must trust them with their lives. What connects all these weapons is not just flawed engineering, but the conditions under which they were created. World War II was not a controlled laboratory, it was chaos. Designers were racing against enemy advances. Factories were bombed. Materials were scarce. Political pressure demanded results, not excuses. A gun that might have worked after 2 more years of refinement was instead rushed into combat within months. Soldiers became the testers, and the battlefield delivered unforgiving feedback. The emotional cost of these failures is often overlooked. Imagine the fear of pulling the trigger and hearing only a click. Imagine the panic of a jammed weapon while enemies advance. For many soldiers, trust in their firearm was as important as training or courage. When that trust was broken, morale suffered. Some soldiers scavenged enemy weapons, preferring unfamiliar gear over their issued arms. Others modified or abandoned their guns entirely. These silent decisions speak volumes about how deeply weapon reliability affected survival. Yet, these failed guns still matter. They taught painful lessons that shaped future design. Simplicity became a priority. Reliability in dirt, cold, and heat became non-negotiable. Post-war firearms benefited from the blood-written lessons of World War II's failures. Every jammed rifle and accidental discharge forced engineers to rethink assumptions. In that sense, even failure contributed to progress. World War II is often told as a story of triumph and innovation, but it is equally a story of mistakes. The guns that failed remind us that war does not forgive shortcuts. Steel alone does not win battles, trust does. And when a weapon fails, it is never just a mechanical issue. It is a moment where history, human lives, and flawed decisions collide. These forgotten guns deserve to be remembered, not for their success, but for what they reveal about the cost of rushing perfection into war.